So I started playing keyboards when I was about 5 years old, and I just kind of fell into music actually, because the piano was always around, but when I was 16, my brother's friend had a band and the keyboard player left. My brother's friend said, "Why don't you try an audition?" I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah." I'd never thought about it before. Did the audition, got the gig, and kind of by the time I was 18, I was already traveling to like Dubai and places like that as a professional musician. And then I moved to London because obviously I grew up in a small town called Bournemouth, nothing much happening. So I moved up to London and I started busking, was how I started. Did that for about a year or so, and then started to get to know some people. Bit by bit I got into the London music scene, culminating in me getting the gig with Jamiroquai, and that was 20 years ago, and I've never looked back really. So when I started out, my influences were actually mainly like rock music, like David Bowie and Jimi Hendrix and the Beatles, and basically the records that my brothers had. So they were my formative influences. Then I got into this band called Japan, who were a synth band in the 80s, and they had these like really otherworldly sounds. And it made me so fascinated about synthesizers and just making your own sound. I got really involved in the soul and R&B scene of the time in the 90s. And got involved with a lot of black music, and that became a real big influence. You've got some very original players. My favourite at the moment is Yusuf Days, the drummer. And I think he's incredible. I love the way he plays. It's very distinctive, and the stuff he's done with Tom Misch, it's very cool, very interesting, very exciting, because I feel like they've paired jazz with pop in a way. Jazz, it's a bit of a out-of-date term in a way, it was made in the 50s, 1950s. We're talking about improvisation, and I think for me, improvisation is most interesting when it's done within the structure of a very interesting, good composition. There's, if you're in London, there's a lot of different nationalities, a lot of different cultures, and you're all kind of crammed in that quite small city together. So obviously it's a melting pot for influence, and I think, jazz musicians will be influenced equally by punk, what they've heard, like any genre that they've heard can't help but go in. I think it's already changing because of what's happened with the pandemic, but also the internet, the way the internet is now. You can have your voice heard, it doesn't matter where you are. So I think it's really great for local areas not to think of themselves as junior partners, just because you live in Wycombe doesn't mean you can't be a great musician, doesn't mean you can't do amazing things. And why shouldn't people in Wycombe enjoy great live music? They can. Our last studio album was called Automaton, which I produced. That was out in 2017, and we're just starting working on another one. We're a bit slow these days to come up with albums, but I think this year you probably won't hear too much from Jamiroquai. Maybe next year will be different. The pandemic hit, obviously everything stopped. I was at home all the time. So it was like a perfect storm in a way for me to actually do my own album, because I've always been so busy, making a living from making music, doing other people's music, that my own thing was, not really a priority to me. Yeah, so this is the first gig I'm going to do my own stuff, so I'm really excited about doing it.
Wow.
It's going to be fantastic. We're going to have Derek, drummer from Jamiroquai. We've also got a couple of the backing singers from Jamiroquai. Val and Hazel are going to come out and sing.
Oh, awesome.
So it's going to be a great show. I've got a fantastic guitar player called Andrew Smith and an amazing bass player called Ernie McCone. And basically it's going to be a good time. It's going to be up-tempo, it's going to be, it's called jazz, but I'm going to be trying to uplift everyone's spirits with the music. We're not going to make it self-indulgent. It's going to be up, it's going to be all about you, the listener, not about us. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun.